questions we wrestle with as Christians about who God is, how do we live out our faith, what is the Bible, what is the truth of the Bible, what are we supposed to believe, how are we supposed to live. There are really big, deep questions that we ask each other, that we ask God, that we wrestle with ourselves. And that's why the Cultivate podcast exists, to help us go deeper in our understanding of who God is, His Word, and the way that He's called us to live. Hey everyone, welcome to the Cultivate podcast with the Grove Church. I'm Charlie Lofton. I am the lead pastor there, and we are here with...
Calling it back to an old one, the one that Charlie loves.
I was going to go to a newer one, Bagel. I was going to go Bagel, but
The one whom Charlie loves is a good one.
Fair enough.
Really sticks me out beyond all the other staff members.
Okay. I was wondering, amongst what group, but you're like specifically amongst the staff.
Yeah, that I'm thinking like Jesus' inner circles. I know those were his friends too, but
Right. Okay.
seems like transfer that over to your life. It would be
So you're not
your
expanding
workers.
it out to like everyone Charlie knows or everyone at the church,
No,
but amongst the staff.
I know that
The
I would
one that-
still be like number 2 or 3 on that list too, but I know you have a wife.
I'm sorry, right now, Charlie gives the ranking system in order of the staff who he loves the most to least. No.
Me.
Abigail. Number one.
Abigail.
Abigail. Can't even remember anybody else's name.
Maeve.
She's not technically on staff.
She's an extension of staff.
Wow. Abigail Boone, our creative director,
Yeesh.
podcast producer,
Mm-hmm.
MC.
Like DJ. With my
you got
headphones.
your
With my
headphones on.
headphones. I was like, I rarely do that.
Nope. Oh,
Whenever you say
rarely do that.
Obviously.
Suggests that there is sometimes that you do DJ.
well, I was thinking like if there needs to be a playlist made for something. Or like the launch party or something like that. And I was like, that's an interesting title to give me for something that I rarely do.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I would only do that. I would only say that half jokingly. Who's DJing this? But like to me, curating a playlist for an event
It's
does
not
make
emceeing.
does make you a DJ.
Sure.
Does make you
But
a DJ.
I'm getting there. I
To
have been
what?
practicing. I told you that I'm
DJing?
working on DJing. I got the app that has like the turntables and stuff.
You need an actual turntable.
I know, but that's a pretty big investment.
Hmm.
Or I have to like really know if I can figure this out or not.
You know who used to do that?
Your
Kim
mom?
Blanchett.
Oh.
Did you say my mom?
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of meant as a
Let's-
joke, and then I remembered she listens to it.
Let's make a list of all the people Charlie knows in most likely to least likely to have ever DJ'd. And coming in at last, my mom.
Kim Blanchett, to those who don't know her, would add her maybe lower on the list, but to those who know the
Like,
random
if you
things,
really know her,
like that's not shocking at
no,
all.
it's not shocking at all. I'm sure you know. It's a woman that goes to our church, by the way.
Yes,
Been going for longer than me, longer time.
really.
Yep. Luke 13, verse 6, the parable of the fig tree. Then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree growing in his vineyard, and he went to look for fruit on it, but did not find any. So he said to the man who took care of the vineyard, "For 3 years now I've been coming back to look for fruit on this fig tree, and haven't found any. Cut it down. Why should it use up the soil?" "Sir," the man replied, "leave it alone for 1 more year, and I'll dig around it and fertilize it. If it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, then cut it down."
Who is he talking to? That was really short.
It is short, and I'm guessing it is one that you're not particularly familiar with.
I think I kind of at first thought I had heard it, but is there other fig tree stories?
Yes.
Okay, so hot chance it wasn't this one that I've heard.
Right. There's one where just Jesus just kind of randomly, for seemingly no good reason, he walks past a fig tree and doesn't have any fruit on it. He curses
That's
it.
what I've heard. Yes. Okay. So he's talking to. No, I don't know who he's talking to. There's something about Pilate up above, and surely he's not talking to Pilate.
No. So it's basically there's some people that came to him and were just asking him questions.
Okay.
So we get that I really get that this is kind of more of a crowd moment. He's in Q&A moment. People are asking him questions. He's giving answers, and now he just chooses to also then add in this parable. So let's call it crowd.
But it's not. They just asked him a random question, and
the question
is his
they
answer
asked
to
him
them.
was, there were some present at that time who told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices.
Huh?
Right.
Like they mixed Pilate's blood into it?
No, there was he mixed some of these people's blood in with sacrifices.
Oh,
and so basically
that is concerning.
the idea being, does that make this, and then Jesus says, you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they suffered this way? And so basically saying that just because something really terrible happens to you doesn't mean that you are a worse person.
So then this is a response to that?
It feels like it's like, hey, while we're here, I'm gonna
Let me tell you one more thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it has anything to do with
but he is talking to a crowd.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's just make sure we just break down it simply. Okay. There's a guy. He owns
a vineyard.
He owns a vineyard. And like this, he's got a bunch of fig trees, and one fig tree in particular is not producing fruit. He's like, get rid of it. Let's put another one in its place. And the gardener says, hey, let me give it another year. I'm gonna work really hard with it. Give it another year, and then if after the year, then it's still bad, then we can cut it down.
I mean, that seems like a fine thought.
And this is also kind of thing that I talked about. What for me was last Sunday. Yesterday is actually, for me, it was yesterday, but for other people, it's going to be 2.5 weeks ago. I talked about that. One of the things I don't like about movies are movies that just stop rather than really kind of bringing it full closure.
I love those movies.
Stop.
When you were talking about it on stage,
stop.
I was like, that's a great way to end it sometimes.
No, it's never a good way to end it.
Why
tell me half a story? Why tell me half a story? There's no good reason to tell me half a story.
It's the artist's intent.
You should fill it in. You should fill it in yourself. Well, that's kind of how I felt about The Matrix, and then they made sequels to it that were worse than the story I had in my mind. So anyways.
Well, whenever you said you like it when it like types up something on the screen, I leaned over I was sitting next to Melanie, someone at our church, and I was like, he would love a good rom-com book. That you see the end in sight the whole time.
You're never gonna go wrong with me with a movie that's formulaic, a TV show that's formulaic.
The couple always gets together in the end.
Scooby-Doo, Phineas and Ferb, Fast and the Furious, action movies with name them, right? Oh no, they're gonna get him. Oh, they didn't get him, and he beat up everybody and killed all the right people at just the right time. Give me a good Jason Statham movie where it's like, he's just an ordinary man who used to, I used to be this agent. Now I'm just trying to live an ordinary life, and they brought me back in, and I had to kill 500 people to save this girl. Yeah, great. And you think they're going to get him, but they don't. And it's just, you know exactly what's going to happen the whole time.
Afterwards.
And for an hour and a half, like, it was great. It's great. He was like, how was that movie? It's like, they killed the bad guys really creatively. It was fun.
That's all the variation you need. So are you saying this parable
just
cuts off? Oh, because we didn't get to see if he comes back.
So what happens in a year?
Gotcha.
Did the tree make it or not?
But the point is about...
It seems to not matter.
Yeah.
So it does not matter. It does not matter whether or not the tree did something after a year.
I could be way off base, but I feel like it's more about the guy that's like, give it one more chance.
So who's the main character here then is the gardener, who is who's he represent?
Us?
Who's the tree?
People who don't know God yet. I'm just taking liberties here.
Yeah,
I could be totally wrong.
That's fair.
Because we've talked about in previous ones.
People who have not yet fully done whatever it is that the owner of the garden
want to be done. Well, because we've talked about in other parables where it's God is like unreasonably generous of how much he's held back for so long. And he's just like been unreal patient.
And he
And that's
already
what it
has.
made me
He
think
already
of.
has. So then the person who owns the tree
Has already been patient.
who is he? That's God. The owner of the
Yeah.
tree is God,
I think so.
and he's already been patient
Mm-hmm.
for
And
3
he's
years.
about
And finally,
it
he's
outta
like,
here.
okay, now is the time. And someone who has both the position and the influence with the Father
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to give and extend even more grace and to, quote, tend to this tree is asking the owner to do this.
So is he Jesus? No, that wouldn't make sense. They wouldn't know that difference, right? I guess he says stuff they don't understand all the
They
time.
say things that they don't understand all the
So
time.
That's not a good reasoning.
I cannot begin to, I cannot believe that on any level, anybody who heard Jesus give this parable had any idea what he was talking about. I don't, I'm sure that, since we're talking about memes, was that this episode or last episode you were asking me about a meme?
Yeah.
You ever seen the meme where it's like there's
a
a group of people talking in a circle and then there's somebody out here that kind of shouts something at them and they kind of just go, thumbs up, and then they just go back to talking.
I haven't seen that.
I'm sure that it's like everybody's over here talking about,
He's like,
and then
hey, we
Jesus
should
is like,
try this
hey,
one.
hey, it's the kingdom is like a guy who had a tree and it wouldn't bear fruit for a few years. He told him to cut it, and the gardener says, "No, man, give it another year."
They're like, okay, anyways.
Great, thanks, thanks for whatever that was. Like I can't imagine. I mean, again, it's so simple. It's not like it's like shocking or there's something really off-putting about it. It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a question of like, if there's something weird about it, like, why does the gardener care? Like, what is it to the gardener?
Well,
it's not
gardener is the one that's taking care of it.
It's not a puppy.
No, but he's
It's not
the
a
one
person.
that's
It's not a
cultivated.
pup. Even a like.
Oh, that's coming from a non-plant
And
person.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're several levels down now. I'm not even a dog person.
Sure.
But like, I guess
I'm a plant person, and I would be very sad if my roommate was like, let's just, I'm like, just one more. I think I can get it to produce leaves or whatever.
But like, what's your emotional attachment? Like you have a tree, like, and again, this is not a plant that you're keeping in your house.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tree that is a part of a tree farm.
Well, then maybe he thinks he might get fired.
He can't get fired by the person that is the one that owns the tree for, like, it's not his fault. No. That's I don't think that's right thinking about it. There's something about it. He's got an emotional investment in this tree, which I think is unusual. I think it is supposed to be unusual.
Okay.
Because again, it is not. It's not a little baby, a crippled baby sheep that you raised from the beginning or anything like that. I mean, it's like it's not your one special tree that your daughter planted when she was 3. It is part of a commercial tree farm.
Sure. Okay. I guess that's fair. You need to come to my house and see my plants.
That's not the right parallel. It's like you've got a Christmas tree farm. You got all these trees that are making really nice Christmas trees, and you got this one that just won't get past 2 feet tall. It's like it's taking up space and using water, and get rid of it and put a tree in there that will actually benefit the farm. And that's the gardener's job, is to cultivate trees that will benefit the farm. And he has a seemingly
attachment to it,
deep attachment to it. I think that's supposed to be unusual.
Okay. Even though I do love my plants.
Again, there's a difference between your plant
and a farm that is supposed to be producing
and a tree
and
a commercial tree farm. And so,
okay, again, you said this is just like a random add-on. This is not answering something they've asked him about.
Right.
So that would make it even more confusing.
Yeah, there really doesn't.
Because it's not like they could be like, oh, he was talking about X, Y, and Z. That's why he said that.
I mean, the closest that you have right now, verse 5, I tell you, no, but unless you repent, you too will all perish. So saying people that have bad things happen to them are not worse than people who don't have bad things to happen to them. But ultimately, everybody is the same. Everyone needs to repent or you'll perish. Okay. And then he follows that up with a story that clearly is about the grace and patience of God. I was right. I say clearly, but I mean clearly to us. I can't imagine that it was at all clear to them.
Right. Okay, so that is on the right track of God being
Yeah.
he's withholding his
Right. And so that's
judgment.
what I'm saying. And the thing about the gardener and the irrational connection to it, I think that probably makes the gardener more Jesus rather than us.
That's fair.
Because if it's you trying to defend your cousin who you want God to be a little more patient with, there's too much emotional distance between the gardener and the tree. And so there is a distance between the Son of God and us, even though he has become a man, right? But there's a distance between them, and he has a deep rooted love and compassion for the tree.
It kind of reminds me of, is that Sodom and Gomorrah? Is that how you say the name? Where it's like if you find one good,
Yeah, it's Abraham.
and
Abraham's
he's like
kind of
keep
bargaining
asking
with
over
God.
and over, like just
If
what if I
how
find
about for just for 5? And God's like, okay, sure, whatever. And then God still destroyed it, couldn't find 5.
Yeah.
Which
but
is
in the same way of like, just give me a little bit more, like, what if I can get this to grow?
yeah.
And he's like asking for more patience.
But again, the reason why I think that the people would not have understood what Jesus was talking about, I don't think they could have identified the gardener. Like I think they would have.
They wouldn't have pieced it as like the guy who's telling us is the gardener.
Like who? Like what? I mean, he's a good teacher, but what pull does he have with God to tell people to not?
Okay.
I just don't think they would have.
They didn't have him as like a deity.
Right. I just don't think they had him on that level yet.
Okay.
And so I think at best it would have just been, they would have just, the gardener would have been irrelevant really to the story, but just more about God has been patient and will continue to be patient.
Okay.
Because the interesting thing, again, not only does it not tell us the story stops rather than ends, it not only does it not tell us what happens to the tree in a year, it really also doesn't tell us whether or not the owner of the tree agreed.
For him to get a year extension.
Leave it alone for another year and I'll dig around it and fertilize. If it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, then cut it down. And that make verse 9.5. No, I said what I said, cut the tree down. You know, I mean, like the story just kind of, again, it doesn't tell us whether or not the owner agreed with him, and it doesn't tell us if he did, what happened to the tree a year later. Again, I think the shocking stop to that is to do the thing, again, that I hate in artsy movies everywhere, which is like,
But that's really good for you sometimes to ponder it yourself. You wouldn't have done good in these times then.
Nope.
To just like think on things.
I was not meant to live in a place with Eastern ways of thinking and oral traditions. And I'd have been really good in an oral tradition in the fact that if you say it, I remember that you said it. Yeah. I could have been good at that. And eventually, and I did. It took me a long time. I eventually learned the discipline. But like I hated literature classes all the way through college. I just didn't get it. Like, what's the I just want to know the answer. What is the answer?
You're such a math person.
They weren't giving answers. And it finally wasn't until I started reading books that I really liked that I was like, oh. But they never gave me an opportunity. Give you very few opportunities in high school and college to read books that I wanted to read.
That
I enjoyed.
Yes.
Or sometimes even understood.
I remember like it was like pulling teeth being at the beach, and I had to read Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And I was just like, I'll do anything to not read this book, but I had to by the time I got back to school.
Yeah, so again, what the result is doesn't matter. The big picture idea here is God is gracious, and we have an advocate that is asking God to be even more gracious. I don't think there's anybody who could have put all of those pieces together initially. I think they could have put together maybe that God is being patient with fruitless trees.
But it is kind of like a double patience.
Yeah. But then again, God has already been patient. Who's this other guy that's telling God to be even more patient?
Yeah.
I don't know that they could have connected who that advocate was, and yeah. So again, I don't know that they could have put all that together. And again, it's 2,000 years later. We are loosely putting it together. I know we can't say here definitively, and I can say with 100% confidence, Jesus was thinking of himself when he talked about the gardener. It's like, no, it doesn't matter who the gardener is. The idea is that God is gracious and is continuing to even be more gracious. Stop trying to make something out of everything, Charlie.
What if Jesus had a code with the disciples and he was like, when I wink, I'm meaning myself. So he's like, in the gardener, wink.
Finger guns.
Yeah, that's me.
And they wouldn't even believe him if somebody came back from the dead.
Wink, wink. Yeah. And they're over there like, oh. Yeah. I think we could have made the Bible more comical. Not that there's not funny parts, but I think we could have written it in such a way.
I think there are funny parts. I think there are funny parts. Again, that's maybe because I have a weird sense of humor, and I'm finding humor that there's not where there's not, and so I'm just reading into it. But I think it's funny. I think Jesus being like, man, who got a kid? They're gonna ask for a loaf of bread and give him a rock.
Yeah, you think that's funny?
I think that's funny. I think that's funny. I also think it's funny when Paul says, man, these Pharisees and these people who are obsessed with circumcision, I wish they'd just take their knife, cut the whole thing off.
I don't remember that.
That's in Galatians. I think that's funny. Yeah, so I mean, there's anyways. I think it's some things are fun. I think some of these stories are meant to make you kind of go,
yeah.
Oh wait,
yeah.
Was he serious? Was he serious?
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, and so I think we struggle with, I think, the big idea of this passage. You've got a very disciplined owner who has a very specific objective of what he wants.
He's going to turn it over.
I want these trees to produce fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was patiently letting this tree kind of work some things out for 3 years and is at least considering a fourth.
Yeah.
We either imagine God as infinite number of years waiting for a tree to get it right, or as
coming back tomorrow.
The first day it's supposed to produce fruit, it doesn't. I'm burning it to the ground, and maybe a few next to it just to teach them all a lesson.
Yeah. But we definitely not even someone else that's like, well, give it a second.
Yeah, the story of Noah is that way. The story of the two worst stories in the Bible. The worst, air quotes. Story of Noah. The story of the conquest of Jericho, where there's just a lot of killing.
Mm-hmm.
We miss
killing, not killing.
Right. We miss how gracious and patient God was. That from the moment of judgment to the actual execution of the judgment in Noah is 120 years. The moment, the Israelites get all the way to Jericho once, and God sends them back for 40 years and wander back to come back. I mean, not to mention however long it took them to get from Egypt to there.
Mm-hmm.
And God constantly pushing stories towards them. Hey, judgment's coming, judgment's coming, judgment's coming. Gets them all the way there, and then still circles them around for 40 more years. Judgment's coming, giving all the opportunities in the world to start growing figs.
Yeah.
And I think we miss that because we want God to be one of these two. And if he shows any sort of judgment, then he's not gracious, and we lose graciousness. Or again, we decide that Jesus is so soft and cuddly, and that he would never say things like, wicked servant, get out of my sight.
Yeah.
Which is what we talked about last week.
But it is kind of interesting you talking about him like sending him back, making him wait, or saying judgment's coming. The 2 weeks ago we were looking at, you wouldn't even believe if someone came back from the dead. It's like, gosh, y'all have been told for a long time now.
Right.
Including us, but like
chance after chance after chance after chance.
Like his patience actually has been beyond radical and you still haven't heard, and he's still willing to do it a little bit longer when Jesus asks him to.
Yeah, so then it just really comes down to we don't think God should hold anyone accountable.
Yeah.
Where it will be impossible for God to have been gracious enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's why we come up with a thing that we talked about before, kind of the Christian universalists, where God's going to keep pursuing you even after death. And with that, the rich guy in Hades hollering out to Abraham, like, okay, well, all right, angels, go get him. He said he's sorry now. That there is no point in which it is appropriate for God to say, okay, now judgment. And that's an arrogance on our part, and a misunderstanding about our relationship with respect to God.
Well,
and so
I also feel like this may get way too existential, but it's like someone does have to say the fine. Like I was with my nieces and nephews at the pool, and it's like you can keep convincing mom to let you stay a little bit longer, but at some point
we're not going to be here next Tuesday.
No, like we're gonna go home. Right. I will give you like 3 more, like 10 more minutes, but at some point, and then like on the global scale, like the world, the order of the world doesn't work for it to just be like nothing's ever gonna happen.
Right. So here's my classic dad move in that situation. Okay, so
you can drive yourself home.
No. It's let's say we need to leave at 4. So at 3:45, I'm like, okay, we gotta go. Dad, 10 more minutes. Okay, 10 more minutes, and then I give him 15. Now it's 4. You asked for 10 more minutes. I gave you 15. It's time to go, and then we go.
But they're like, I didn't even know you're doing that though.
But they got the perceived
you
bonus.
Gave them more. Yeah,
they got the perceived. I gave them what they asked for and more. But really, we ended up leaving exactly when I wanted to leave.
That's trickery right there.
It's classic dad move. Classic dad move. It's the same thing as like, what time we need to go to the airport? What time do we need to leave? We need to leave at 7. So everybody be ready at 7.
But really, you need to
we need to leave at 7:15.
Oh, you need to give a bigger window if you ever fly with me.
Yeah. And then if we leave actually at 7, I'm like, good job, everybody.
And then you just got downtime in there.
Yeah. Then we just got there a little bit. We got here a little earlier. I thought I didn't think I'd be ready at 7.
Yeah. But I do think that it just like it is interesting seeing those two back to back of like they wish there was more patience. But even if there was more patience, they wouldn't have recognized it. But here you're seeing just how much patience is asked for and given. Yeah, and then in the parable of the talents too that we saw last week, and again, as we talked about, when we kind of organize these things not based on banger level, but based on themes, right? We kind of got these what is afterlife and judgment? What is the kingdom ultimately going to be like? In the parable of the talents is the journey was gone. It was for a long time, an undetermined and undisclosed amount of time, but for a long time. He had a long opportunity. He could have come in at the last few months and been like, he's going to come back here at some point. I probably need to do something with this. Right. I mean, there's a lengthy amount of time was given. And after a lengthy, generous amount of time, you will be held accountable for what you did with your life. So now we're leaning in more to the grace here, but it's both. I think that's why artistically we're not left with, did he give them the year and what happened after the year? It doesn't matter. What matters is God is gracious, but eventually you're going to be held to account for whether or not you produce figs or not. So we got some more of these coming, including one of the ones that you're really excited about, which was sheep and the goat. Oh,
I thought it was the 10 virgins. I thought that was
so I listened to a sermon series one time that compared both of those, and I just really I don't know if we'll go down the same route, but it was really, really interesting. So after this, we've only got 5 more. No, yeah, 5 more. Woohoo! I was right.
And they're all kind of this in that same sort of genre. All 5 of these are left are like, what is the kingdom? What is my responsibility? What is God's level of patience? What is his expectation? And what does judgment look like?
Okay.
So we're gonna have a very full picture of this here in about 5 weeks.
We'll be crystal clear by the end.
Crystal clear. Thanks as always, Abigail. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for listening to the Cultivate podcast. Our hope is that you are taking steps to go deeper in your faith, that you are asking big questions and you're looking for answers. We hope that we can be a resource for you through our podcast and any other way that we can help you. You can find all our episodes anywhere that you can find podcasts, including YouTube. And again, thank you so much for joining us.